On a quiet night that should have been ordinary, a little girl whispered the words that changed everything. "Daddy, please help her." What happened next would pull a humble single-dad janitor back into a world he tried desperately to leave behind. And by sunrise, a powerful Navy admiral would stand at his doorstep, not in anger, but in fear and gratitude. Before we begin this unforgettable story of courage, kindness, and second chances, we'd love to have you with us. If you enjoy heartfelt stories that warm the soul and honor everyday heroes, feel free to like, share, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss the next chapter of hope. Now, let's step into the story. The diner always felt warmer after sunset, its neon lights humming softly, casting amber reflections over chrome edges and laminated menus. It was the kind of place older folks in America would call a little pocket of yesterday, where the coffee was always hot, the pies always too sweet, and strangers almost always kind. For Kane Miller, this diner was a small island of peace in a life built from quiet sacrifices. He sat at the counter in his worn green jacket, the unmistakable uniform of a janitor on the naval base nearby. His long chestnut hair brushed his shoulders, and from certain angles, the lines on his face looked both older and younger than his 35 years, older in sorrow, younger in spirit. Beside him, little Emily swung her legs off the red vinyl stool. 7 years old, bright as a sunflower, with curls the color of summer wheat. "Daddy," she said, nudging him with her elbow. "Do you want my cherry? I don't like cherries on top." Kane smiled one of those small, rare smiles he saved only for her. "You keep it, Em. You earned it." Emily pouted dramatically, then laughed at her own performance. The waitress chuckled from across the counter. Kane's life was simple, predictable, a rhythm he had fought hard to protect. Wake early, clean buildings others never noticed, pick Emily up from school, cook dinner, read bedtime stories, and above all, keep their world safe and steady. He didn't think fate still had twists left for him, but fate rarely sends warnings. Sometimes it sends a cry. The diner's door burst open with a violent clang, wind gusting through like a cold slap. A young woman stumbled inside, breathless, terrified, her eyes searching for something she couldn't name. Behind her, 3 men lurked in the doorway like shadows that had learned to walk upright. Big, heavy-set, the kind of men who brought trouble with them like a smell. The room went dead silent. The girl gasped, voice trembling. "Please, someone help me." The men scanned the diner predators, checking a pen full of sheep. One smirked, another cracked his knuckles, and the third let the door swing shut behind him with quiet menace. Emily's small hand found Kane's sleeve. "Daddy," she whispered, voice shaking. "Daddy, please help her." Kane felt the world narrow to a pinpoint. He turned. The way a soldier turns when he hears the wrong kind of footsteps. The way a father turns when danger aims not just at strangers, but at the eyes of his child. For a moment, just a breath, he wished he could pretend he didn't hear. Pretend to be only who he appeared to be, a janitor, a widowed father, a man who had chosen invisibility over violence. But Emily's fingers tightened, and Kane Miller had never once ignored a plea for help. He rose from his seat, slowly, calmly, as if he'd rehearsed this movement 1,000 times in another life. His boots hit the diner floor with the certainty of a man who knows exactly what he is capable of and exactly what he must do. One of the men snorted. "Look at this. The janitor wants to play hero." The young woman, light brown hair clinging to her wet cheeks, stared at Kane as though she couldn't believe someone had stood up at all. When he spoke, his voice was gentle, but firm. She said, "She doesn't want to go with you." The largest man stepped forward. and we said, "Stay out of it." Another chimed in. "This ain't your business, buddy." Emily's stool squeaked as she slid down from it, her little hands clutching the edge in fear. "Daddy?" Kane slightly turned his head toward her, just enough for her to see the softness in his expression. "It's okay, sweetheart. Stay right there." Then he faced the men fully, and something in his eyes changed. Gone was the weary janitor. Gone was the single father trying to blend into the background. What remained was the quiet storm he had once been, the man who had survived missions. No news channel ever reported the man who had carried fallen teammates off battlefields, unknown to civilians. The man who did not run. The first attacker lunged. He barely made it 2 steps. Kane caught his wrist mid-swing, twisted, and sent the man crashing onto the table with a dull thud. Coffee spilled, cups, shattered cries rang out. Yet Kane moved as though time itself bent around him. The second man tried to grab him from behind. Kane sidestepped, hooked his foot, and drove an elbow into the man's ribs, sending him groaning to the floor. The third man hesitated just long enough for Kane to know he'd flee rather than fight. But Kane didn't chase. He didn't have to. His message was already written loud and clear across the diner floor. Silence fell again. Shocked, heavy, almost reverent. The young woman stared at him as though witnessing something she couldn't process. Fear, relief, disbelief all tangled together. "You saved me," she whispered. Kane nodded once. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head barely. "No. But I don't understand. Who are you?" Emily ran to Kane, hugging him tightly around the waist, her voice trembling but proud. "He's my daddy, and he fixes everything." Kane gently rested a hand on her head. "I'm no hero," he murmured. "I'm just a dad." But even he knew those words no longer rang true. Because the girl he'd just saved would change his life in ways he could never predict. And tomorrow morning, someone far more powerful, someone with a uniform, a rank, and a mother's fury would stand on his doorstep demanding answers. The Navy Admiral. The diner owner locked the door behind the last police officer, muttering about paperwork and broken plates. The neon lights outside flickered, then steadied, casting long shadows over the drenched parking lot. A storm was rolling in from the coast, thick clouds swallowing the last traces of evening. Kane stood just outside the door, Emily clinging to the sleeve of his jacket. She wasn't shaking anymore. She trusted him too deeply for fear to linger, but her little fingers curled tight, as if to anchor him to her world. The young woman Madison Drake stood a few feet away, hugging herself, as though the cold hadn't quite registered yet. Her eyes, still wide from shock, kept drifting back to Kane. Not in fear. Not anymore. Something else. Something searching. "Kane," she finally said, her voice soft, unsure. Can I thank you properly?" "There's no need," he replied, looking down at Emily as he adjusted her hood. "But you saved anyone would have stepped in." Kane interrupted gently. They both knew that wasn't true. Madison's lips parted, as if she wanted to insist. But she didn't push. There was vulnerability about her, a careful mixture of courage and fragility, as if she had spent years learning how to be strong, and only tonight remembered she was still human. Lightning cracked in the distance. Emily looked up. "Daddy, it's gonna rain again." "We should get home," Kane said. But Madison stepped forward, rain-specked wind blowing strands of hair across her face. "Wait, please." Kane stopped. Emily looked between them, sensing something adult and complicated hanging in the air. Madison swallowed, fighting emotions she clearly didn't want strangers to see. "I was so scared tonight," she whispered, "and I don't know why they were after me. It all happened so fast. I I didn't think anyone would help." Kane's tone softened the stern battlefield instinct, easing into something warmer. "You're safe now," he said. "That's what matters." Madison's throat trembled. "Because of you." Emily with the innocence of a child who still believes the world can be fixed by kindness. Alone smiled up at Madison. "My daddy helps people. He always does that." Kane exhaled, half amusement, half guilt. "Emily," he murmured. "What?" "It's true," she insisted with full conviction. Madison let out a tiny laugh, a sound that carried gratitude, disbelief, and something tender. For the first time, Kane saw past the fear on her face. He saw the kindness in her eyes, the weariness, the weight she carried quietly, and he realized she reminded him of someone he once knew, someone he once loved. He shoved the thought away. "Do you need a ride home?" he asked, practical and steady. Madison shook her head. "No. My family will pick me up." But she didn't look relieved. She looked conflicted. For a split second, Kane wondered why. Before he could say anything else, a car pulled up, a modest sedan driven by an older man who glanced nervously at the diner windows. Madison stiffened. "That's my uncle," she whispered. Then, after a breath, "Thank you again, Kane. Truly." He nodded once. Madison looked at Emily and smiled, soft enough to light something inside the little girl. "Good night, sweetheart." "Good night, Miss Madison," Emily chirped, waving wildly. Madison stepped into the rain, her figure illuminated by headlights. But before the door closed, she looked back, one last lingering glance at Kane. It wasn't the look of a stranger. It was the look of a woman who had been saved by someone who felt like destiny. The car pulled away. Kane and Emily began their walk home. Their apartment was only 3 blocks from the diner, a small unit in an aging building where pipes rattled and the elevator rarely worked. But Emily didn't seem to mind. To her, home was anywhere her father stood. Inside, Kane made hot chocolate, while Emily climbed into her pajamas. Rain drummed against the windows, steady and relentless. "Daddy?" Emily asked, as she settled onto the couch with her mug. "Yeah, Em." "Who was that lady?" Kane paused. He wasn't sure how to explain a stranger who felt strangely familiar. "She was someone who needed help," he said finally. Emily nodded, slowly processing this with the seriousness only children can. "She was pretty," she added. Kane huffed quietly. "That's not really the point." "But she was," Emily insisted. "And she looked at you like Mommy used to look at you." Silence. A painful tenderness flickered across Kane's eyes, the kind that comes from memories too deep to touch without breaking something inside. He sat beside her, folding one arm around her small shoulders. People look at each other for lots of reasons," he said softly. Emily peeked up at him. "You like her?" Kane almost laughed, but the truth was more complicated. "I don't know her," he said. "And tonight was a lot." Emily took a sip of hot chocolate, thinking hard. "You helped her. That means she's going to be in our story now." Kane felt something warm pinch behind his ribs. "Our story," Emily nodded firmly. "Everybody who stays in our life becomes part of our story." He brushed her curls aside gently. "Well, Emily Miller, that's a beautiful way of seeing the world." She smiled, proud of herself. But later that night, long after Emily was asleep, Kane sat alone by the window, rain painting silver trails down the glass. His hands were steady, but inside he felt the ripple of something he'd avoided for years. His past was supposed to stay buried. His skills were supposed to fade into obscurity. His life was supposed to be quiet. But one frightened young woman, one desperate cry, one simple plea from his daughter, "Daddy, please, help her," had awakened everything he had kept locked away. And the storm outside was nothing compared to the one inside him. As thunder shook the sky, Kane closed his eyes. He didn't know yet that the woman he saved was no ordinary civilian. He didn't know she belonged to one of the most powerful families in the Navy. He didn't know a mother, a fierce commanding admiral, had already watched the viral video and recognized the impossible precision in his movements. He didn't know tomorrow morning would bring the knock that would change everything. All he knew was this: a quiet life could no longer stay quiet. Morning crept into the small apartment gently like an old friend who knew not to knock too loudly. The storm from the night before had passed, leaving the streets washed clean puddles glistening beneath the muted sunrise. Kane Miller stood by the kitchen counter tying Emily's shoelaces while she hummed a tune she clearly made up herself. "Daddy," she said between hums, "can we get pancakes today?" Mrs. Fletcher said, "Pancakes make rainy days feel sunny." Kane smiled quietly. "We'll see, Em." But his mind wasn't fully there. He'd barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Madison drenched in fear, then in gratitude, her voice trembling as she thanked him. And behind that image, another lingered Emily, gripping his sleeve, pleading with a courage that belonged to a child who believed her father could fix anything. Kane had spent years building a quiet life, but last night cracked it open. He could feel it in his bones. Someone saw too much. Someone recorded too much. And someone dangerous somewhere might remember his name. He didn't like the feeling. Father and daughter walked toward school, the air cool and crisp, lined with the earthy scent left by rain. Emily jumped across puddles, her backpack bouncing with each leap. "Do you think the lady is okay?" she asked suddenly. Kane hesitated. "I hope so." "You think she got home safe?" "I'm sure she did." But even as he said it, he wasn't certain. Something had felt off. The uncle who picked her up had barely made eye contact. Madison looked tense, like someone returning to a cage painted to look like home. Emily tugged his sleeve. "Daddy, You didn't answer the real question." Kane frowned gently. "What's the real question?" Emily's eyes softened in a way no 7-year-old should understand. "Do you think she's okay?" Kane exhaled the truth, slipping out quietly. "I hope she didn't feel alone last night." Emily nodded, satisfied with that answer. Sometimes children didn't need the whole truth. They needed the whole heart. The rain returns. School drop-off was quick. Emily dashed toward her friends with a wave so big it nearly spun her around. Kane lingered a moment, watching her joy fill the yard. She was his compass, his anchor, his reason for walking away from a world built on shadows and violence. But as he turned to leave, the wind shifted, and he heard footsteps. Soft, uneven, familiar somehow. A young woman stood near the chain-link fence, holding the strap of her bag, like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Madison. Her hair was damp again, strands clinging to her cheeks as if the morning mist refused to let her go. She looked out of place, too fragile for the harshness of the world, and too gentle to hide it. Kane's breath caught for a heartbeat. "Madison," he said. Surprised, she stepped forward, the corners of her lips pulling into a small, hopeful smile. "Hi." Kane. Something about the way she said his name, soft, cautious, almost grateful, made him straighten unconsciously. "What are you doing here?" he asked. I hoped I'd see you," she admitted. "I didn't know where else to go." Her voice cracked slightly. It tugged at Kane in a way he wasn't ready for. He gestured subtly toward the sidewalk away from parents and children. "Let's talk over here." They walked down the quiet street, rain beginning to fall again in thin, shimmering lines. "I couldn't sleep," Madison said. "Every time I closed my eyes, I saw everything. Them chasing me. The way you fought." She shivered. "I didn't know people could move like that." Kane didn't answer. He didn't like talking about the part of him he tried so hard to bury. I needed to see you, she continued, struggling with her nerves. I needed to thank you again. Every word I said last night, I meant it. Kane looked at her. Really looked. There was bravery in her trembling, strength beneath her gentleness. She wasn't fragile because she was weak. She was fragile because she cared. You don't owe me anything, he said. Madison's expression tightened. Don't say that. I owe you my life. Kane slipped his hands into his pockets. You owe those men nothing. And you don't owe me anything either. You were scared, Madison. Anyone would have been. Not everyone has someone to come for them, she whispered. That stopped him. She stared at the wet pavement, voice lowering. I know people think I live some perfect life, but I'm not as safe as everyone assumes. Kane sensed the truth behind her words, heavy, complicated, and wrapped in secrets she wasn't ready to name. He asked gently, Is someone threatening you? Madison's eyes flicked up, glistening. No, not exactly. I grew up with a mother who commands ship's bases and thousands of sailors. She's strong, fearless, untouchable. But I'm not like her. And sometimes, she struggled, swallowing hard. Sometimes I think the world knows that. Kane's jaw tightened. What happened last night, it wasn't your fault, he said. Bad people prey on fear. They mistake kindness for weakness. Madison looked at him, a quiet fire kindling in her chest. You didn't. He blinked. You didn't mistake anything, she said. You didn't look at me like a problem or a burden. You just stepped in. You didn't even hesitate. Kane's chest stirred with something he hadn't felt in a long time, something he wasn't prepared for. Sometimes, he said slowly, the right thing doesn't need thinking. Madison's breath caught. Emily's lucky, she whispered, to have a father like you. Kane's voice softened. I'm the lucky one. Rain thickened, falling in soft sheets around them. Madison took a tiny step closer. Her voice was quiet, but full of truth. Can I see you again? Kane hesitated, caught between fear of letting someone in and the pull he felt toward her. Before he could speak, she added softly, I don't want last night to be the only time our paths cross. The admission hung between them, delicate and brave. Kane finally exhaled. We'll talk again, he said. If you want to. A relieved smile warmed her face, small but bright. I wanna, she whispered. Before either could say more, a black SUV turned the corner far too slowly. Madison froze. Kane noticed the way her shoulders tensed, the flicker of dread in her eyes. Madison. She stepped back. I have to go. She hurried off, disappearing into the car before he could ask anything more. The SUV doors shut, tinted windows hid her expression, and the vehicle drove away with unsettling precision. Kane stood alone in the rain, something cold settling in his gut. Whoever had picked her up last night, whoever picked her up now, they weren't ordinary. And tomorrow morning, he would learn just how extraordinary her world truly was. The morning sun had barely cleared the horizon when Kane Miller felt the air shift, subtle but undeniable. It wasn't the kind of shift most people would notice. But Kane wasn't most people. Years ago, he'd walked battlefields where trouble announced itself, not with sirens or shouts, but with silence, with stillness, with the faint tightening in a man's chest when danger approached, wearing an unexpected face. Today, that feeling returned. He was brewing coffee in his small kitchen, listening to the soft rattle of Emily's crayons as she drew at the table. The quiet was comforting, ordinary. And yet, Kane could sense the storm before he ever heard the footsteps. 3 precise knocks, sharp, measured, not the knock of a neighbor or a delivery driver. Kane wiped his hands on a towel. Emily, sweetheart, he said calmly, stay in your room for a moment, okay? She looked up, sensing something in his tone. Is it the bad men again? No, he reassured gently, but go on. Daddy will be right here. Emily nodded and hurried to her room, clutching her drawing like a shield. Kane approached the door slowly. He didn't peek through the peephole he didn't need to. Whoever stood on the other side already knew he was home. He opened the door, and the quiet hallway seemed to fold inward around the woman standing there. Tall, straight-backed, dressed in a sharply pressed white navy uniform, rank insignia glinting like steel in daylight. Her presence radiated command so naturally that even the air felt disciplined. Admiral Evelyn Drake. Kane recognized her energy instantly, the unmistakable aura of someone who had carried the weight of thousands, made decisions that changed the course of lives, and held herself with unbreakable control. But beneath that control, her eyes burned with something sharper. Fear. Fury. A mother's urgency. "Mr. Miller," she said, voice cool and tightly restrained. "We need to talk." Kane felt his spine straighten, an old reflex from another world. "Admiral," he acknowledged quietly. "I wasn't expecting you." "No," she replied. "You weren't." Behind her stood two naval officers in formal attire. They weren't there to intimidate, just to shield and witness. But Kane noted their posture, their hovering caution. They were afraid of him. Or rather, afraid of why she had come. Admiral Drake dismissed them with a flick of her hand. "Wait downstairs." They obeyed immediately. When the hallway was empty, she fixed her gaze on Kane with piercing clarity. "Where is your daughter?" "In her room." "Good," the Admiral said. "She doesn't need to hear this." A chill slid through Kane. He stepped aside. "You can come in." The Admiral's boots clicked once on the hardwood floor before the silence swallowed the sound entirely. She glanced around the modest apartment, the aging couch, the dishes drying by the sink, the drawings taped proudly on the refrigerator. Her eyes softened just for a second. Then the steel returned. "You were involved in an incident yesterday," she said. Kane met her gaze, steady and unreadable. "Yes." "My daughter," she continued, "was the young woman you protected." Kane froze, not visibly, but enough for her mother's eyes to notice. "Madison," he whispered. "Yes." "Madison." The Admiral's voice flickered with something fragile, a mother's trembling gratitude buried under layers of duty. "You saved her life." Kane shook his head. "I helped someone who needed it." "No," she corrected firmly. "You saved her life." I watched the footage. She studied him carefully, assessing, measuring, tracing the precision of the movements she had seen on screen. "That takedown was not something a janitor learns," she said softly. "Or a civilian. Or even a standard serviceman." She let the words settle. "Kane Miller, which unit were you in?" Kane said nothing. His silence confirmed everything she suspected and everything she feared. Admiral Drake crossed her arms, eyes darkening with the weight of old military scars. "Years ago," she said slowly, "I served alongside a team known as Ghost Line, a covert reaction unit, highly classified, highly dangerous, designed for missions no one wanted to acknowledge publicly." Her voice dropped. "I recognize your movements, the stance, the speed." Kane felt the past clawing its way back uninvited. "That life is behind me," he said, voice gravelly. "I walked away, but the skills remained," she countered. "And last night, they saved my child." He had no answer for that. Admiral Drake's expression shifted, not softer, but deeper. "I am grateful," she said quietly. "More grateful than I can properly express." Then her jaw tightened. "But gratitude doesn't erase danger." Kane's eyes narrowed. "What danger?" The Admiral reached into her coat and placed a tablet on the table. She tapped the screen. The diner footage played. The angles changed. Slow-motion breakdowns displayed frame-by-frame analysis. Then another clip. 3 men in the shadows, talking, planning. One checking his swollen jaw with rage, and behind them a 4th man, dark eyes, scarred cheek, a name whispered in military archives like a warning Kai Mercer. Admiral Drake watched Kane's face carefully. "You know him?" Kane didn't deny it. "He's been looking for you for a long time," she said. "And now, because of last night, he knows exactly where to find you." Kane closed his eyes, exhaling a slow, resigned breath. The quiet life he built for Emily had just been shattered. Kane, Admiral Drake said, voice lower than before, "I came here as a mother first. But I am also an officer, and I cannot ignore what I saw." She stepped closer, her eyes fierce with resolve. "I need to know whether my daughter is in danger. I need to know whether you are in danger. And I need to know whether that danger is coming for both of you." Kane opened his eyes. "Madison didn't tell you everything, did she?" The Admiral's silence was answer enough. Kane swallowed. "I'll talk to her. I'll make sure she's safe." But Admiral Drake shook her head. "No. From this point forward, safety is not a conversation. It is an order." Kane bristled, but she stepped closer. So close he could see the fine lines of worry carved by years of duty. "You saved my daughter," once she whispered. "But if Kai Mercer is involved, I'm terrified it won't be the last time you'll have to." Then softer, "And I don't know whether to thank you, or fear everything you bring with you." Her voice trembled with emotion she rarely allowed herself. Before Kane could speak, a small voice echoed from the hallway. "Daddy, who's that lady?" Emily peeked around the corner, rubbing her eyes. The Admiral turned, and something unspoken passed through her expression. Recognition, pain, hope. Kane gently guided Emily forward. "This is Admiral Drake," he said softly. "She's Madison's mother." Emily blinked, then smiled warmly. "Oh, the nice lady who made Madison safe her whole life." The Admiral froze. It had been a long time since anyone had called her nice. She knelt down, slowly eye level with the little girl who held her father's world together. "You must be Emily," she said. Emily nodded. "Daddy said helping people is always the right thing." The Admiral's throat tightened. She stood. "Kane," she said, quietly. "We're not done." She walked to the door, but paused before leaving. "Whatever happens next," she said, "will change all of us." Then she stepped into the hallway, the door clicking shut behind her. Kane stood frozen, the echo of her words heavy in the room. Emily tugged his hand. "Daddy, are we in trouble?" Kane lifted her into his arms. "No, sweetheart," he said, though his voice betrayed a truth he couldn't hide. "We're not in trouble. Trouble is coming to us." Night returned like an old adversary, quiet, heavy, and full of memory. Kane Miller sat on the edge of his bed, elbows on his knees, hands clasped tight enough for the knuckles to whiten. Emily had fallen asleep within minutes, curled up with her stuffed dolphin, blissfully unaware of the storm circling her father's life. But Kane couldn't sleep, not with the Admiral's words ringing through his skull. "Kai Mercer is looking for you. He knows exactly where you are. And because of last night, he knows who matters to you." Kane exhaled shakily, rubbing a hand down his face. For years he'd carried the weight of shadows, believing they'd finally lost interest in him. But shadows never forget. They bide their time. They wait. And when they return hungry. He stood moving toward the small box tucked deep inside the closet. He pulled it out gently, as though it contained something alive, and sat with it on his lap. Inside was what remained of a life he had sworn to bury. Ghostline patches, a dog tag with half the letters scratched off, a photo of 12 men standing on a landing pad smiling, sweating, unaware that half of them would never come home from their last deployment. He touched the photo with a fragile reverence. Gone. Gone. Lost. Missing. Dead. Except him. Survivor's guilt was an anchor he wore beneath his everyday clothes, and Kai Mercer had once worn the same patch Kane did until betrayal carved a line between them that could never be repaired. A knock shook the door, not loud, but determined. Kane didn't move for a moment. He didn't need to look. He knew exactly who it was. He opened the door. Madison Drake stood there, wrapped in a navy blue coat, her hair pulled into a loose knot. Her eyes, so gentle yesterday, were now filled with something raw and aching. "Kane," she whispered, "I had to see you." He glanced down the hallway. "Did your mother follow you?" "No," she said. "She doesn't know I'm here." She hesitated, then stepped closer. "She's scared," Madison admitted. "More scared than she's been since Dad died." Kane softened. He knew the story. Admiral Drake's husband, a Navy commander lost at sea during an operation. So classified, only a handful of people ever knew the real details. Madison swallowed hard. "She saw the footage of you again this morning. But that's not why she came. It's Kai Mercer." Kane stiffened. Madison continued in a trembling whisper. "We've heard that name before. In security briefings. In hearings. Mom never told me details, just that. He was dangerous, unpredictable, and that there were only a few men alive who had ever fought him and walked away." Her eyes drifted to Kane's. "You were one of them, weren't you?" Kane remained silent. Madison stepped further into the apartment, voice breaking. "Kane, why didn't you tell me?" He exhaled, heavy with regret, "Because that life nearly cost me everything. And I won't let it touch Emily." Something in Madison's face shifted, pain mixed with understanding. "So you walked away?" "Yes." "And Kai didn't?" "No." Madison looked around the apartment, the humble furniture, the simple walls, the warmth Emily's drawings brought to the space. She understood why Kane had built this world, why he protected it with every breath. "You were trying to live quietly," she whispered. "And I disrupted that." Kane shook his head. "You didn't bring this. Kai would have found me eventually. I've been waiting for this shoe to drop for years." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "But he's coming faster now, harder. And my mother thinks he may come for me too." Kane's jaw clenched. "Because of last night," he said. Madison nodded, fear flickering beneath her calm exterior. The protector inside Kane, long dormant, long restrained, rose like a tide. "You're not safe at home," he said softly. "Not tonight." Madison hesitated, then whispered, "I know." Madison sat on the worn couch while Kane paced, thinking. Her hands fidgeted, her breath uneven. "I don't think Mom told you everything," Madison said suddenly. Kane stopped. Madison drew a breath. She knew you the moment she saw that footage. Not your face, your posture, your precision. She said there was only one unit who fought like that. Ghostline, Kane said. Madison nodded. She lost men from Ghostline once. Men she respected. Men who died protecting others. When she saw the video, she recognized the ghost of what you used to be. Kane absorbed that in silence. Then Madison added, voice trembling, and she recognized the danger that follows ghosts. Kane sank into the armchair opposite her. "She's right," he murmured. Madison's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "So, what do we do?" Before Kane could answer, a soft clatter came from the hallway. Emily peeked out, rubbing her sleepy eyes. "Daddy, is Miss Madison here?" Madison smiled gently. "Yes, sweetheart. I'm here." Emily patted over, curling onto Kane's lap. "Can she stay for breakfast?" Kane's chest tightened. The innocence of the question stabbed straight through the tension. Madison stroked Emily's hair. I would love that. But Kane's protective instincts screamed inside him. No, he said gently. Miss Madison has to go home soon. It's not safe right now. Emily frowned. Is it the bad men again? Madison froze. Kane placed a calming hand on Emily's back. There are people who might want to bother Miss Madison. Daddy needs to make sure she's okay. Emily brightened suddenly. Daddy will fix it. Daddy always fixes everything. Madison's breath hitched, the quiet faith in Emily's voice, the quiet strength in Kane's eyes. It softened something deep inside her. Kane, Madison whispered, let me help. I don't want to hide behind you. I want to stand with you. He shook his head. Madison, this isn't your fight. But I'm already in it, she insisted, whether I like it or not. She wasn't wrong. Kane stood slowly. I need to speak with your mother. Madison nodded. She's at Naval Headquarters. I can take you. Kane hesitated for a long moment. Then Emily, he said softly. Get your jacket, sweetheart. Madison blinked. You're bringing her. Kane's eyes darkened with a decision forged from years of battle and fatherhood. If Kai Mercer wants a war, Kane said softly, I keep my daughter where I can see her. Madison swallowed, both afraid and awed by the resolve in his voice. As Emily rushed to grab her shoes, Madison whispered, Kane, are you prepared for what's coming? He looked toward the window, the sky darkening though morning had barely begun. No, he said honestly, but I've run long enough. His eyes hardened with a quiet fire. It's time to face the ghost. Naval Headquarters loomed like a fortress of steel and glass, a place built not only to protect a coast, but to project an unspoken message: strength lives here. Ships glided in the distance, their silhouettes cutting sharp lines against the gray morning sky. The air smelled of salt engine oil and storms that never fully left the sea. Kane Miller stood beside Madison Emily, perched on his hip like a small shadow refusing to leave her father's side. The weight of the moment pressed differently on each of them. Madison with her quiet fear masked beneath bravery, Emily with innocent trust, and Kane with the heavy awareness that the world he had tried to outrun was closing in. They walked through the security gates. Every guard stared at Kane a half-second too long, not in suspicion, but in recognition. The viral video was still fresh online. Soldiers whispered, "That's him." The janitor who took down 3 men. He moved like a specialist. Ghostline, maybe Kane ignored it all. Madison led them to a private wing, her steps quick, nervous. Emily held Kane's jacket tightly, whispering, "Daddy, is this where the Navy heroes work?" Kane softened. "Yes, sweetheart." Emily nodded, as though this explained everything. But nothing about today was simple. They reached a steel-reinforced door. 2 officers stood guard. When Madison approached, one of them's eyes widened. "Miss Drake, the Admiral is expecting you." The door slid open. And Evelyn Drake, Admiral of the Coastal Fleet, iron-willed commander mother, fiercely protective, stood waiting for them. She wasn't in her formal uniform. She wore a dark field jacket, sleeves rolled, her posture coiled like a spring ready to strike. Her eyes landed on Madison first with relief, so raw it cracked her facade. Then she saw Emily, then Kane. Her jaw tightened. "You shouldn't have brought your daughter," she said sharply. Kane didn't flinch. "I don't leave her behind when danger is coming." Evelyn's gaze flickered annoyance, respect, something bordering on empathy. "Sit," she ordered. Kane didn't sit. Madison and Emily did. Evelyn exhaled slowly, gathering herself. "Kai Mercer resurfaced last night," she said. "Not just as a petty criminal, he's aligned with a smuggling cell operating out of the southern docks. They specialize in weapons, the dangerous kind." She glanced at Kane. Your kind. Madison stiffened. Mom. Evelyn lifted a hand to silence her. Kai wants revenge, she continued. You took something from him years ago, something he likely never forgave. Kane's voice was quiet but hard. I took his freedom after he betrayed our unit. Evelyn nodded. And he blames you for the scars on his face. Emily's small voice broke in innocently. Why does the bad man want to hurt you? Daddy Kane crouched beside her, brushing a curl away from her eyes. Because people who hurt others don't like being stopped. Emily nodded solemnly, accepting the explanation with the wisdom of someone who had lived through more danger than she understood. Evelyn watched the moment emotion flickering like a match inside her stern gaze. Then she turned to Madison. You're in danger too, she said, gently. Too gently for an admiral, perfectly gentle for a mother. If Mercer knows Kane saved you, he may use you to get to him. Madison swallowed, dread settling in her chest. So what do we do? Evelyn answered without hesitation. I've ordered surveillance on both your apartment and Kane's, but Mercer is unpredictable. He may not attack where we expect. Kane straightened. He won't wait long. Evelyn met his eyes, two seasoned warriors recognizing the truth. Agreed. Silence hung heavy. Then Kane said, You brought us here for more than warnings. Evelyn almost smiled. He was perceptive in ways she respected. Yes, she admitted. I need your help understanding how Mercer thinks, what he'll target, how far he'll go. Madison looked between them, realizing this wasn't just strategy. It was two parts of a buried history resurfacing with teeth. What did he do? She whispered. Kane looked away. Evelyn answered for him. Mercer turned on his team during a classified op. 3 men died because he gave away their position. Madison gasped softly. Kane's voice was gravel. I stopped him before he killed more. Emily reached for his hand. You saved people then. Just like you saved Miss Madison. The room stilled. Kane pressed his lips together, emotion warring with restraint. Madison's eyes softened, full of something that went deeper than gratitude. Evelyn cleared her throat, attempting to anchor the conversation back to strategy. There's more, she said. We intercepted chatter last night. She tapped a panel. A grainy image projected onto the wall, Mercer in a warehouse pacing furious. We find Miller. We take the girl. And we make him watch. Madison gasped. Emily tensed and pressed closer to Kane. Kane's eyes darkened to pure steel. He's not touching her, he said. Quiet enough to terrify a lesser heart. Evelyn studied him. Not as a superior officer. Not as a strategist. As a mother. You want to protect Madison and Emily, she said. So do I. So here's my proposition. Madison looked at her mother in confusion. What proposition? Evelyn turned to Kane fully. You and Emily stay at the officer's residence tonight. Secure perimeter. Controlled access. My oversight. Madison blinked. Mom, you're asking him to stay with us. Evelyn's voice was firm. This is the safest solution. For everyone. Kane hesitated, but Emily tugged his jacket. Daddy, she whispered. I like Miss Madison. And the Admiral lady. She looks like she wants to help. Kane sighed. Emily's instincts were rarely wrong. He looked at Evelyn. All right. We stay. Madison released a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Relief washed over her face so gently, it made Kane look away. But the moment was cut short. A shrill alarm pierced the air, red lights flashing around the room. Evelyn's expression hardened instantly. That's perimeter breach, a voice shouted from the hallway. Admiral Eastern Gate compromised. Madison froze. Emily clung to Kane's neck. Kane stood, all softness gone. Mercer's here, he said. No. Evelyn corrected, drawing her sidearm with deadly calm. He's testing how fast we react. The facility shook with the sound of distant impact, metal against metal. Madison's breath trembled. Emily whispered, terrified, "Daddy!" Kane's voice dropped into that quiet, unshakable tone only a protector could use. "I've got you, sweetheart." Evelyn holstered her weapon long enough to meet his gaze. "Kane, the storm has started." He nodded once. "No," he said. It returned. The officer's residence sat on a quiet rise overlooking the harbor, an old stone building reinforced with newer security measures, a place where admirals, commanders, and their families lived when duty kept them close to the base. From a distance, it looked peaceful. But Kane Miller knew peace could be the most fragile illusion of all. Evelyn Drake personally escorted them inside her posture, rigid with military focus. Madison stayed close to Kane, though she tried not to look frightened. Emily held Kane's hand with both of hers, as if protecting him from the world. Inside the residence was warm and softly lit. Old naval photos lined the walls, brass frames glinting like memories preserved in metal. A fireplace flickered in the corner, casting long, gentle shadows across polished wood floors. Emily's eyes widened. "It's like a castle," she whispered. For the first time since the incident, Madison smiled fully. "Yes," she said softly. "A safe one?" Evelyn turned to Kane. "You'll take the guest suite on the first floor. Madison's room is upstairs. Emily can stay wherever she feels comfortable." Emily tugged Kane's sleeve. "Can I stay with you, Daddy?" He brushed her hair gently. "Of course." The Admiral nodded, once approving of the choice. But as Evelyn reviewed the final security checks with 2 officers, Madison stepped closer to Kane, her voice dropping to a quiet tremble. "I'm sorry my mother involved you like this." Kane shook his head. "She's doing what any parent would." Madison swallowed. "Still, I hate that she's dragging you back to a life you clearly didn't want." Kane didn't answer right away. He looked toward Emily kneeling on the hearthstone, warming her hands by the fire. "There are things in my past I didn't want Emily to grow up around," he said quietly. "Things I promised myself I'd leave behind. And yet, Madison whispered, here they are. Coming back anyway." Kane met her eyes, deep brown, soft, but brave. "Yes," he said. "But not because of you." Something in Madison eased. A burden lifted she didn't realize she'd been carrying. "Kane," she murmured, her voice like the beginning of something delicate. "If you hadn't been at the diner, I don't think I would have made it out." Kane's jaw tightened. "You don't need to thank me." Madison took a step closer, eyes glimmering with emotion she couldn't hide. "I do. Not just for saving me, but for seeing me. For caring. Even when I was a stranger running into your world." Kane swallowed. After years locked behind walls of grief and survival, Madison's gentleness pressed against those walls, like rain wearing down stone. But before he could respond, Emily announced, "Daddy, Miss Madison." "Come sit with me," Madison laughed softly, the sound lifting the heavy air. "Duty calls." Kane muttered. They sat by the hearth, the fire crackling softly, an anchor in the tense silence still humming beneath the room. Emily leaned against Madison's arm, as if they'd known each other forever. "I like you," she said confidently. Madison brushed a curl from Emily's forehead. "I like you too, sweetheart." Emily brightened. "Do you like my daddy?" "Because I think you do." Kane choked on air. Madison flushed, glancing at him with wide eyes. "Emily, that's—" Emily continued, oblivious to the flush climbing up Madison's cheeks. "He smiles more when you're here. That means he likes you." Madison looked down at her lap. Her voice dropped to a soft whisper. I hope he does." Kane felt something shift inside him, a quiet opening, a small, warm fracture in walls that had taken years to build. Emily yawned and crawled into Kane's lap, curling up like a cat settling into the safest place it knew. "Daddy, can Miss Madison tell me a story?" Madison looked startled. "Oh, well, I'm not very good at stories." "Yes, you are," Emily insisted. "Tell me how you met Daddy." Madison's breath caught. Kane shook his head with a wry smile. "I think we all know how that went." Madison smiled shyly. "It's not much of a fairy tale. For me, it is," Emily said matter-of-factly. "Because Daddy saved you." Kane kissed the top of her head, overwhelmed for a moment. Madison's eyes softened. "Emily, he saved both of us." Kane lifted his gaze. This time he didn't look away. Later that night, after Emily fell asleep against Kane's chest, Madison rose quietly and returned with a blanket. She hesitated just for a moment, before draping it gently over Emily's small shoulders and Kane's arm. Her fingers brushed the back of his hand. It was accidental. Or maybe it wasn't. A warmth sparked between them, gentle, unmistakable, deeply human. "Kane," she whispered, "I need to tell you something." He looked up. Madison's eyes glistened. "I wasn't just scared last night," she confessed. "I was lost. I didn't know where to run. I didn't know who to trust. I didn't even know if I deserved to be saved." Kane frowned softly. "Madison." "But then you stood up," she continued, voice trembling. "A stranger, a janitor, a father protecting his daughter. And suddenly, I felt safe in a way I haven't felt in years." Kane's chest tightened. "You're stronger than you think," he said. "You didn't freeze. You survived. But I only survived because of you." Kane shook his head. "No. You survived because you're still here. Because you kept fighting." Madison's eyes shined with something tender and brave. "Kane, I don't want you to face what's coming alone." He inhaled sharply, caught between instinct and longing. "Madison," he whispered, "I don't know how to let people in anymore." She stepped closer. "That's okay," she said softly. "Then let me knock. Until you do." His breath caught. A single tear, small, uninvited, escaped down Madison's cheek. And Kane did something he hadn't done in years. He reached out and brushed it away, with tenderness, with reverence, with a quiet, aching hope. But before either could say more, a thunderous sound shattered the night. A heavy crash, a clipped shout, boots pounding across concrete. Evelyn Drake burst into the room, weapon drawn. "Kane, Madison, get down." Emily jolted awake in Kane's arms. "What's happening?" she whimpered. Kane held her tight. Outside, alarms erupted. Madison's face lost all color. Evelyn shouted, "Perimeter breach again." Kane stood slowly, eyes turning to steel. "Mercer isn't testing us anymore," he said. "He's here." Screams echoed down the stone corridor. Alarms blared, red lights strobing like frantic heartbeats. Boots pounded in every direction, the unmistakable rhythm of soldiers trying to form order out of chaos. But for Kane, Miller, everything narrowed into a single silent focus. Emily's trembling hand locked around his neck, her heartbeat fluttering like a terrified bird. "Kane, move." Admiral Evelyn Drake barked, stepping in front of them with her weapon raised. Madison clung to his arm, breath trembling, her eyes searching the shadows for a threat she knew she wouldn't recognize until it was too late. "Where's the breach?" Kane shouted over the alarms. "Westgate, second time tonight," Evelyn snarled. They came fast. "Professional." "Someone's giving them intel." Kane's jaw tightened. "Mercer," he said. "No one else could get this far." Evelyn flicked him a sharp glance. "Yes. And he's not hiding his intentions anymore." Another explosion rattled the entire building. Dust fell from the beams overhead. Madison gasped and covered her ears. Emily buried her face into Kane's chest. Without hesitation, Kane lifted Emily higher and tucked her head under his chin. "It's all right, sweetheart," he whispered. "Daddy's got you." Even amidst the panic, Evelyn's eyes flickered with something between awe and sorrow at how instinctive his protection was, how absolute. "Follow me," she commanded. "Both of you." Evelyn led them down a narrow stairwell toward a reinforced operations room. Soldiers passed them, shouting coordinates, signaling to each other, tightening the base's defenses. Madison stumbled once on the stair. Kane immediately reached back, catching her hand. "I'm okay," she said, but her voice shook. He didn't let go. At the bottom level, 2 steel doors sealed behind them. The operations room was a hive of tension screens, flickering officers relaying intel radios, blaring static and coded messages. "Admiral on deck," someone called. Evelyn waved the protocol aside. "Report." A lieutenant pointed at a map with trembling fingers. "He's probing every weak point, ma'am." "Whoever's leading this, Mercer." Evelyn corrected. "Yes, ma'am, Mercer. He's not trying to break in this time. He's trying to draw someone out." Madison's breath caught. "Draw someone? You mean Kane?" Evelyn didn't answer directly. Instead, she turned to Kane. "This is your world," she said. "Tell me what's his play." Kane studied the data, the feeds, the erratic but calculated pressure Mercer applied across the perimeter. "He's not trying to breach," Kane said. "He's creating noise, chaos, enough confusion that the base pulls resources inward." Evelyn's eyes sharpened. "Meaning he wants a clean corridor," Kane replied. "A blind spot, somewhere he can get a clear shot or a clean grab." Madison paled. At me, Kane shook his head. "No. At Emily." Madison's face drained of color. Evelyn's jaw set like granite. "He thinks Emily is your weakness," she said. "She isn't my weakness," Kane growled, pulling his daughter closer. "She's my strength." Emily's small hand pressed gently against his chest. "Daddy." Kane lowered his voice, protective and warm. "It's okay, sweetheart. I'm right here." Madison felt her throat tighten at the sight, father and daughter, bound by a love so fierce it could bend steel. A civilian alarm rang a different tone. Higher, sharper. Evelyn froze. "That's the residential alert," she said. "Someone triggered a distress signal upstairs." Madison covered her mouth. "Oh, God." "Mom, I'm here," Evelyn said. "This is not directed at me." Kane's eyes darkened. "It's directed at Madison," he said. "He's telling us he knows exactly where she sleeps." Madison's knees weakened, and Kane caught her elbow instinctively. "How does he know anything?" she whispered. "How does he always stay one step ahead?" Evelyn hesitated. Kane noticed. "What aren't you saying?" he asked sharply. Evelyn inhaled, bracing herself. "There was a breach in classified operations 2 years ago," Evelyn said. "Files stolen. Personnel records. Mission logs." Kane froze. "Ghost line mission logs?" he asked. "Yes," Evelyn admitted, "including the operation that ended your unit, and your involvement with Mercer." Madison's eyes widened. "You mean he's known about Kane for years?" Evelyn nodded. "He just didn't know where to find him." Until the video. Kane's jaw clenched with deadly calm. "So he's not planning to kill me," Kane said. "He's planning to destroy everything I love." Emily held on to him tighter. "I don't want to leave, Daddy," she whispered. "You won't," Kane promised fiercely. "I will never let anyone take you." The room quieted around them. Even the officers slowed. This wasn't a soldier speaking to a child. This was a father drawing a line so hard even the universe wouldn't dare cross it. Evelyn studied him, really studied him. Then she approached slowly, her voice low and steady. "Kane Miller," she said, "I need to know something, and I need you to answer honestly." Kane lifted his chin. "What?" the Admiral exhaled. "If Mercer breaches this base, if he gets through my officers, My walls? My defenses? Will you fight Kane held her gaze, not as a subordinate, not as a soldier, as a man who had already lost too much. I will do whatever I have to do, he said quietly, to protect Emily and Madison. Madison's breath caught sharply emotion flooding her eyes. Evelyn nodded, her voice softened for the first time all night. Good, she said, because I'm going to test your ability before I put my daughter's life in your hands. Kane blinked. What does that mean? Evelyn turned to an officer. Open the training chamber. Madison inhaled sharply. Mom. No, it's not optional, Evelyn said, her tone shifting back to command. Kane narrowed his eyes. You want to test me? Now. Yes, Evelyn said. Before things escalate further. And if I pass? Kane asked. Evelyn's voice dropped into something cold and resolute. Then you will have my trust, and my daughter's life will depend on you. The steel door to the training chamber hissed open. A dim hallway beyond glowed with red emergency lighting. Kane kissed Emily's forehead gently and handed her to Madison. Madison clung to Emily protectively. Kane, please be careful. He gave a small, steady nod. Then Kane Miller stepped into the darkness, and the door shut behind him with an echo that sounded like destiny locking into place. The training chamber was nothing like the polished halls of naval headquarters. It was stark, raw. A rectangle of concrete and steel with reinforced walls built to withstand impacts far beyond normal human strength. Dim red lights pulsed along the ceiling, bathing the space in an ominous glow. Kane Miller stepped inside the door, sealing shut behind him with a metallic clang that echoed like a judge's gavel. On the far wall, glass windows hid the operations booth. Behind it, Admiral Evelyn Drake stood with arms folded, eyes sharp as cut ice. Madison and Emily were beside her, though Emily remained in Madison's arms, fingers tangled in her sweater, frightened but trusting. Kane raised his eyes to the window. Evelyn's expression did not soften. Testing begins. Now her voice boomed through the intercom, calm, clipped, unmistakably military. Kane rolled his shoulders, slowly, loosening muscles tightened by years of restraint. Daddy. Emily's small voice reached the chamber through the speaker. Please be careful. His eyes flicked to her tiny face behind the glass. He nodded once short, steady, full of silent reassurance. Madison placed a hand on Emily's head, whispering soothing words. Then her gaze found Kane's. Her eyes trembled. Her fear wasn't for herself. It wasn't even for Emily. It was for him. Metal shutters snapped open around the chamber. Targets emerged. First simple dummies, then moving silhouettes, then mechanical arms programmed with unpredictable strikes. Kane exhaled slowly. Ghost line training level 2. He recognized it immediately. 3 years ago, he would have breezed through without a thought. But 3 years ago, he wasn't a father balancing exhaustion from night shifts and single parenthood. He didn't carry the weight of Emily's small world depending entirely on him. Even so, something inside him awakened as the first mechanical arm swung toward him. Kane moved, fast, precise, controlled. He ducked under the strike, pivoted, and landed a palm heel directly on the pressure node. The machine paused, recalculated. The second arm swung, then the third. Kane flowed between them like water meeting steel. Every motion was instinct muscle memory sharpened by necessity. He never fought for violence. He fought for survival. For Emily. For the life he built. Madison watched, stunned. She had seen Kane fight in the diner, quick improvised, born of adrenaline. This was something entirely different. This was discipline. Skill. Mastery. Kane used to be like this, she whispered. Evelyn didn't turn her eyes from the glass. Yes, she said softly. He was one of the best. Madison swallowed the weight of that truth. Emily pressed her face to the window. "That's my daddy," she whispered proudly. And Kane, mid-turn, almost faltered, not physically, but emotionally, because he heard her tiny voice through the intercom, and it struck deeper than any blow could. The room darkened abruptly. Madison flinched. "Mom, what's happening?" "Phase 2, Evelyn said. Unpredictable assault. He won't see what's coming." Mechanical shutters opened again. This time, humanoid drones stepped forward, movements eerily lifelike. Emily gasped. "Are they robots?" "Yes," Madison whispered, trying to stay calm. "But Daddy can handle it." Right, Evelyn answered, but even she sounded unsure. The drones lunged. Kane blocked the first with his forearm, spun, and kicked the second square in the chest. The third grabbed his shoulder, but Kane slammed his weight back, flipping it over his body. The chamber became a whirlwind of motion, pounding metal grunts of exertion, the scrape of boots on concrete. Madison clutched the railing. "Mom, this is too much, shut it down." Evelyn didn't answer. Her jaw was locked tight. Mom Evelyn raised a hand, not in refusal, but in warning. "Watch him, Madison. I am watching," Madison cried. "He's exhausted. He hasn't slept." No," Evelyn said more quietly. "Watch who he becomes." Madison looked again, and for the first time she understood what her mother meant. Kane didn't fight like a soldier. He didn't fight like a killer. He fought like a father. Every block, every dodge, every strike, it all radiated a fierce, disciplined purpose. He wasn't proving something. He was protecting something. Madison's throat tightened. "That's why," Evelyn murmured. "That's why he left the unit. That intensity, it doesn't shut off." Madison felt tears burn her eyes. He's risking everything again. For us. Emily pressed her palm to the glass. "Daddy, don't stop. I'm here." And Kane, hearing her, rose with a strength even he didn't know he still had. He grabbed the last drone, twisted, disabled its core with a surgical strike. It fell. Silence filled the chamber. Kane dropped to one knee, chest rising and falling sharply, not from weakness, from everything he held back. Madison pressed her fist to her mouth. "Oh my God," Evelyn signaled. The chamber lights reset to white. "Kane Miller," she said through the intercom, steadier than before, approached the observation door. Kane pushed himself to his feet, slowly, with dignity. The door opened. Emily burst forward, tears in her eyes. "Daddy," she cried. "You did it." He knelt, wrapping her in a tight embrace. "I'm okay, sweetheart," he whispered. "I'm right here." Madison rushed forward next. She stopped inches away, breath trembling, then leaned into him, forehead against his temple, her hands gripping his shoulders. "You scared me," she whispered. "You scared me so much." Kane closed his eyes. "I'm sorry." They stayed like that, three people clinging to the moment until Evelyn cleared her throat softly. When Kane stood, Evelyn faced him directly. The room quieted. Kane Miller, the Admiral, said, her voice neither cold nor commanding, just deeply human. "You didn't just pass my test." Kane waited. "You exceeded it. A beat. And you earned something I do not give freely." Kane raised an eyebrow slightly. "My trust," Evelyn Drake said. "Fully. Completely." Madison's hand slipped into Kane's. Evelyn stepped closer, looking him straight in the eye. "If Mercer comes for my daughter," she said quietly, "you have my permission and my blessing to do whatever it takes." The room fell utterly still. Evelyn finished. "You will protect Madison. You will protect Emily. And I will protect you." Kane nodded once. A man accepting a vow. Madison's voice trembled. "Then what do we do now?" Evelyn turned toward the map table, her expression turning to steel. "Now," she said, "we prepare for Mercer's next move." Night settled over the naval compound, like a heavy cloak. silent tents waiting. Storm clouds gathered above the coastline, crackling with electricity that mirrored the atmosphere inside the Admiral's residence. Every hallway was guarded, every camera monitored, every officer on high alert. But Kane Miller didn't trust any of it. Danger wasn't coming from the walls, it was coming for the people he loved. In the living room, maps and schematics covered the table. Evelyn Drake stood over them, pointing out weak points, assessing response times. Officers briefed her constantly, their radios hissing with static. Madison hovered near Kane, her hands twisting nervously, eyes flicking to every sound. And Emily. Emily sat in Kane's lap, drawing on a notepad. She pressed her cheek against his chest, listening to the steady heartbeat that anchored her world. "Daddy," she whispered, "are the bad men coming back?" Kane kissed her forehead. "They won't get to you," he said. "Not while I'm here." Emily nodded softly, but she didn't let go of his shirt. Evelyn looked over her shoulder, eyes softening for a heartbeat, before she masked it again. "Kane," she called. "It's time." He gently handed Emily to Madison. "I'll be right back, sweetheart," he said. Emily held his fingers as long as she could before Madison whispered, "He'll come back, I promise." Kane stood and followed Evelyn to the operations room. A large screen displayed Mercer's movements, grainy camera footage, docs, surveillance, scattered intel. He was circling the base from afar, unpredictable as a riptide. Evelyn folded her arms. "He's testing us," she said, looking for hesitation. Weakness. Fear. Kane shook his head. "No. He's looking for an opening to separate us." Evelyn gave him a measured, almost respectful glance. "He won't get one," she said. But Kane could hear the doubt beneath her confidence. He stepped closer to the screen. Mercer's scarred face flickered. "You still don't understand him," Kane said softly. "Mercer doesn't attack walls. He attacks hearts. He doesn't break barriers. He breaks people." Evelyn tensed. Madison, entering quietly behind them, overheard every word. "So what do we do?" she asked. Kane turned. "We stop reacting," he said, "and start acting." Evelyn lifted her chin. "You have a plan," Kane nodded. But when he explained it, how they needed to control the battleground, lure Mercer, guide the confrontation to a place where civilian risk was zero, Evelyn's expression hardened. "That's risky," she said. "It's necessary. That's assuming we can predict his timing." Kane shook his head. "We don't need his timing. We need his pattern." Evelyn stared at him, stunned. You memorized his pattern from a handful of scattered feeds. Kane didn't answer. He didn't need to. Evelyn exhaled slowly. "All right. What do you need?" Kane pointed at the map. He chose an abandoned supply yard adjacent to the base, a perfect place to draw Mercer in, isolate him, and stop him before he reached Madison or Emily. Evelyn nodded. Madison stepped closer, voice trembling. "You're putting yourself in danger." Kane turned toward her. "I'm keeping you out of it." Madison swallowed. "I don't want you to face him alone." "You won't," he said softly. "Not while I'm breathing." That made her chest turn warm and heavy all at once. "Okay," she whispered. "Then we trust you." Evelyn marked the map. "The yard it is," she said. "I'll deploy a perimeter team." But Kane shook his head. "No. He'll sense them. This has to be quiet, controlled, low visibility." Evelyn stared. "You're asking me to send my daughter's protector into a battlefield alone?" Kane met her eyes with calm determination. "No, Admiral. I'm asking you to trust that I know how to end this." Silence filled the room. Then Evelyn Drake, Admiral Mother Survivor, placed a hand on the table and nodded. Once. "I do," she said. Madison's breath caught. This wasn't just authorization. This was surrendering control. This was trust of the deepest kind. Kane returned to the living room to find Emily half asleep in Madison's arms. Daddy, Emily mumbled. Are we going home yet? Not yet, sweetheart, he said gently. Are you going out? She asked suddenly. Alert. Kane lifted her into his arms, holding her tightly. I won't be gone long, he said softly. And I'll come right back. Emily nodded, but only because she believed in him more than she feared anything else. Promise, she whispered. Kane pressed his forehead to hers. Promise. Madison watched them, tears gathering quietly. When Emily finally drifted back to sleep, Madison stepped toward Kane. You don't have to do this, she whispered. Yes, he said. I do. Why, she asked, voice breaking. Kane swallowed. Because if I don't end this now, Mercer will keep coming. For you. For Emily. For anyone he thinks will hurt me most. Madison's hand trembled as she reached for his. Kane, please come back. He squeezed her hand gently. I will. Her voice shook. Say you'll try. Say you'll be careful. Say something that tells me he placed a finger under her chin, lifting her eyes to his. I'm fighting for a future, he said quietly. A future I didn't think I'd ever deserve. One where Emily feels safe. One where you smile without fear. One where I'm not just surviving, I'm living. Madison's breath hitched. Kane, she whispered. He stepped back, slow, deliberate, painful. Then he said the words she needed and feared most. I'm coming back for both of you. Madison covered her mouth with her hand, tears slipping through her lashes. Evelyn entered the room. It's time. Kane nodded, pulled on his jacket and walked toward the door. Emily stirred in Madison's arms, opening her eyes just long enough to whisper, Daddy, be my hero one more time. Kane blinked away the burn behind his eyes. Always, he whispered. Then he stepped out into the storm, where Destiny and Kai Mercer waited. The abandoned supply yard sat beneath a sky bruised with storm clouds. Wind cut through the chain-link fences, rattling loose metal sheets like distant war drums. Flooded puddles shimmered beneath the flicker of old security lamps, turning the ground into a mosaic of light and shadow. Kane Miller walked alone. No backup, no radio, no guarantee he'd come back. Just a single father stepping into the darkness to protect the two people who had become his entire world. The echoes of his footsteps faded. Silence settled around him. Then a low, chilling whistle slithered between the shipping containers. Kane froze. Kai Mercer stepped from the shadows, his scarred face illuminated by the sickly glow of failing lights. His eyes were sharp, hungry. A predator who had spent years chasing a single obsession. Well, well, Mercer hissed. Ghostline's quiet hero. The janitor who forgot he's really a killer. Kane didn't respond. Mercer smiled, an empty, soulless curve of the mouth. You took everything from me. My career, my freedom, my face. And now you think you get to play daddy in some small town? Kane's voice was steady. I didn't take anything from you. You chose betrayal. You chose blood. Mercer's expression twitched with fury. I warned them, he growled. I told them Ghostline was a mistake, but no one listened. They put you on a pedestal. Said you were the one with honor. He spat at the ground near Kane's feet. Honor is a weakness, and I'm going to rip it out of you before I take the girl. Kane's eyes turned cold as steel. You're not touching Emily, Mercer smirked. We'll see. Mercer lunged first, fast, brutal, fueled by years of rage. Kane dodged just in time, the blow snapping through the air like a whip. Kane countered with a strike to the ribs, but Mercer absorbed it, twisting Kane's arm and sending both men crashing against a shipping container. Pain shot through Kane's shoulder. Mercer laughed. You're slower than you used to be. Softer. Fatherhood will do that to a man. Kane's jaw clenched. I'm not the one hiding behind children. Mercer's smile vanished. He attacked again, ruthless, precise, each hit powered by a lifetime of hatred. Kane blocked what he could, absorbed what he couldn't. His body screamed in protest, but his mind stayed laser-focused. Protect Emily. Protect Madison. End this. Mercer swung a metal pipe from the ground. Kane ducked, rolled, grabbed a chain lying nearby. The chain wrapped around Mercer's wrist mid-strike, and Kane pulled hard, sending Mercer stumbling forward. Kane slammed his knee into Mercer's chest. Once, twice. Mercer coughed blood but grinned through it. That's the killer I remember. Kane's voice trembled not from fear, but conviction. I'm not a killer, Mercer roared and tackled him, both men crashing into a stack of wooden pallets. Splinters flew. Kane gasped as the air was knocked from his lungs. Mercer straddled him, fists pounding down like hammers. This ends tonight, Mercer screamed. Kane blocked the next blow with both arms, twisting his body and hurling Mercer off balance. They scrambled to their feet. Kane's breathing was ragged, but his eyes burned with fire. Mercer charged again. Kane stepped into the momentum, pivoted, and delivered a precise strike to the nerve cluster on Mercer's neck. Mercer staggered. Kane hit him again, and again, and again. Every strike fueled not by rage, but by love. Emily's laughter, Madison's trembling hope. Their faces, their futures, the life he refused to lose. Mercer collapsed to his knees, gasping. You won't win, he choked. Others will come. Kane grabbed him by the collar, pulling him close. Then let them, Kane whispered. I'll protect my family, every single time. Mercer swung one final desperate punch. Kane dodged and struck the finishing blow. Mercer crumpled to the ground, unmoving, defeated, forever silenced. A long, trembling breath escaped Kane's chest. It was over. Minutes later, flashing lights pierced the darkness. Evelyn Drake's convoy stormed the yard officers, sweeping the area, securing Mercer's body, checking Kane for injuries. Madison ran to him the moment she saw him standing. Kane, her arms wrapped around him, trembling against his chest. Kane held her just as fiercely, burying his face in her hair. I told you I'd come back, he whispered. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You kept your promise. Emily wriggled free from Evelyn's arms and ran straight to Kane. Daddy Kane lifted her into his embrace, emotion overwhelming him. You okay, sweetheart? Emily nodded, gripping his shirt. You're my hero. Kane kissed her forehead, gentle, reverent. And you're my reason. Evelyn approached, her expression a mixture of relief and awe. You did it, she said quietly. No, Kane replied. We did. You protected Madison. I protected my daughter. And together, we ended him. Evelyn nodded, emotion tightening her voice. I misjudged you, she said. You're not just a soldier. You're a father. And a good man. Kane met her eyes. Thank you, Admiral. Evelyn extended her hand. No. Thank you. He shook it. Two protectors, two parents bound by mutual respect. Weeks later, life settled into something gentler. Kane found new work, still as a janitor, but now on base with better hours and safer surroundings. Emily made new friends. Evelyn visited often. Madison stayed close. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low over the water, Kane, Madison, and Emily sat on the pier together, sharing a simple meal from the diner where it all began. Emily leaned against Madison's side, giggling as Madison braided her hair. Kane watched them, warmth swelling in his chest. Madison caught his gaze. What are you thinking? She asked softly. That this Kane said feels like peace. Madison's smile was tender. Feels like home, Emily chimed in. Feels like pancakes. They laughed, a sound light enough to lift the sky. Madison reached for Kane's hand. He didn't hesitate this time. Their fingers intertwined. warm, certain, hopeful. Kane looked at the two people beside him, Madison and Emily, illuminated by the golden glow of a new dawn. He hadn't just survived. He hadn't just protected. He had found something he never expected again. A second chance at life, a family, a future. Madison leaned her head against his shoulder. "Kane," she whispered, "what now?" He squeezed her hand. Now he said softly, "We begin." And for the first time in years, Kane Miller believed in the promise of tomorrow. Before we close today's story, we'd love to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Our community has grown into a beautiful circle of listeners from all across the country and the world, and your stories, your comments, and your presence truly matter here. If this story touched your heart even a little, feel welcome to like the video, share it with someone who may need a moment of hope, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss the next comforting story we create. Thank you sincerely for spending your precious time with us today. Your support keeps this small corner of the internet warm, gentle, and full of kindness. We look forward to seeing you in the next story.